Hey everyone, welcome back to the Alberta Roundup. I'm your host Rachel Emmanuel. I'm filming live from Calgary today, where I was here earlier this week to cover the UCP leadership announcement. We have a lot of great topics for you today. What we're going to be looking at. Alberta has a new premier. Meanwhile, everybody wants to live in this province. Edmonton city councillors have passed their plastics ban. They're also discussing $170 million worth of bike lanes. And Public Safety Minister Mendicino has said he needs the province's help to implement his gun buyback scheme. All that and more happening now on the Alberta Roundup. Okay guys, let's start with the biggest story in the province, maybe in the country right now. Alberta has a new premier. It is Danielle Smith. She won the Alberta premiership on the 6th ballot with 53.8% of voters' support. Now, it was a very suspenseful night for those of us that were on the ground. You might be wondering what happened. So it started with an announcement from the party a couple hours before the leadership event was supposed to begin, that it was going to be delayed by about 2 hours. Now, there was lots of speculations, maybe even some conspiracy theories, if you will, about what had gone wrong, but it turned out the counting process was going well. The party just needed a little more time to verify and count the ballots. So they announced that they were adding more volunteers in hopes of getting that process done quickly and that the results would be announced at 7:30. The results didn't come in until about 8:25 p.m. And once they did come in, they were given ballot results every 7 to 10 minutes. You guys might be surprised to learn that leadership candidate Leila Ahir was the first to drop off the ballot. I know, who thought that the candidate that sold UCP leadership memberships at a Liberal event with Trudeau would be the first to fall off the ballot for a Conservative Party leadership nomination? Shocking. Ahir fell off the ballot with 1.7% of the vote. Following her, Rajan Sawhney fell off with 2.6% of voter support. Interestingly, shortly before the results were announced, Sawhney gave a little press conference, and she said that she had no regrets about her campaign and that she would support the leader no matter who they were. Now, you guys might remember Sawhney sort of positioned herself as the antidote to Danielle Smith throughout the leadership campaign. She said she thought many of Smith's policies were dangerous, like the Alberta Sovereignty Act, and that she wanted to position herself as a candidate who was an alternative to Smith. But now she's made it clear that she will support Smith in her leadership. After Smith fell off, independent MLA Todd Loewen fell off the ballot with 7.8% of voter support. The question here is whether or not he'll be allowed back into caucus. He texted me on Friday and said he was in the UCP caucus meeting, so I think that's a pretty good indication that we'll see him back in the caucus pretty soon. Rebecca Schultz was the next to fall off with 8.4% of voter support, followed by Brian Jean with 14.8% of the vote. And then, of course, it came down to former Finance Minister Travis Toews. No surprise there, he was trailing Smith in the polls throughout the entire campaign. He came second with 46.23% of the vote, so it was certainly a very tight race that went all the way to the 6th ballot before Smith finally pulled off the victory with 53.8%, as I mentioned, and the crowd was certainly very excited when she had that victory. We're going to play a little bit of her victory speech for you now. Take a listen.
We will not have our voices silenced and censored. We will not be told what we must put in our bodies in order to work or to travel. We will not have our resources landlocked or our energy phased out of existence by virtue signaling prime ministers. Albertans, not Ottawa, will chart our own destiny on our own terms, and we will work with our fellow Canadians to build the most free and prosperous country on earth.
Okay guys, Premier-designate Danielle Smith has said she's not interested in supporting another Olympic bid. For those of you who aren't aware, in November 2018, 56.4% of Calgarians voted to stop the exploration of a 2026 Olympic bid. Earlier this week on the Corey Morgan Show, Smith said the people have spoken. She said an Olympic bid would be massively expensive and there's no appetite for the province to take it on. This next story won't come to a surprise for those of us that are living here, but it looks like everyone wants to live in Alberta. A new report from the Alberta Treasury Board suggests that Alberta is increasingly a desirable destination for Canadians struggling under a cost of living crisis. The report said that interprovincial immigration to Alberta has not been this high since 2014. That's the last time oil prices were over $100 per barrel. This story hits home for me because I was one of the people that moved to Alberta in the second quarter from Ontario. I know some of you told me at the time that I was another Ontario plant, but by and large, people have been very friendly since I've been here, and I think that's the experience for most newcomers. Ontario, meanwhile, lost the largest number of people to interprovincial immigration and contributed the most number of new Alberta residents. I wonder why. Okay guys, I told you I would keep my eye on this story for you, and I have. Unfortunately, I have to tell you that Edmonton City Councillors have approved their plastics bylaw. It will take effect beginning July 1, 2023. Councillors approved the proposal in an 11 to 13 vote on Tuesday. For those of you who aren't familiar what the bylaw is going to look like, essentially plastic utensils and condiment packages will be restricted under the bylaw, unless a customer requests them. And restaurants must serve dine-in drinks in reusable cups. Okay guys, moving into the controversy of the week. Edmonton City Councillors this week approved a proposal for building 100 kilometers of bike lanes that will cost the city $170 million, plus another $11 million to maintain annually. City administrators presented 4 options, with the lowest option costing $25 million and the most expensive option being the $170 million option. That option would have construction finished by 2026. Now, I must note that final approval still has to come in fall during budget talks. And I'm not saying that this is a waste of money. Of course, as a journalist, I would never give my opinion. But people online were quick to note that you can sometimes only bike in Alberta for 3 to 4 months. In the winters, temperatures sometimes drop to, negative 49 degrees Celsius. So if you're one of those people who's biking all year round, that'll be great for you. But I suspect there's only about 4 people who really fall into that category. What we're watching in the weeks to come. I'm sure you guys are aware that Danielle Smith is the only UCP leadership candidate who didn't have a seat in the Alberta legislature. She still doesn't have a seat, of course, but she'll be looking to run in a by-election. She said that some people have come up to her, some UCP MLAs have come up to her and suggested that, maybe she could run in their seat. They're willing to step down so she can run. On Friday morning, Michaela Fry posted on Twitter that she was stepping down and that she was encouraging Danielle Smith to run in her riding. So I'll let you know as soon as we hear whether or not Smith is going to run in that by-election or in another one. Of course, something else to keep your eye out for if any of the UCP leadership candidates that were unsuccessful decide to give up their seat in the legislature ahead of the next general election this spring. All right, guys, and the funny Alberta politics moment of the week. Federal Public Safety Minister Mendicino has admitted that he needs the province's help to implement his gun grab scheme. You guys are familiar with the details of this story by now. Essentially, 3 provinces, including Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, have told the government they don't want to help its gun grab scheme, and they definitely don't want their provincial resources being redirected to act as confiscation agents when they're already in dire shortage of the provincial resources. Now, at a Tuesday's hearing of the Parliamentary Committee on Public Safety, a Conservative MP asked Mendicino whether he has a plan B for provinces that won't aid in the gun grab buyback. The minister acknowledged that he has no plan B and said he's still focused on plan A. Quote, advancing a fair buyback program that will compensate law-abiding gun owners for the assault-style rifles that they're originally purchased lawfully is consistent with keeping our communities safe, and we will always be collaborative with our provincial and territorial partners, he said. My door will always be open to working with them in a wide variety of priorities to achieve that goal. Now, the minister did not recognize the already strong opposition he's received from 3 provinces and how he plans to address that. Okay, guys, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend, and I will see you next week.